a little airish in the mountains of southern Appalachia this morning. As you can see behind me, maybe you can see some of those beautiful fall colors. Fall of the year, of course, is definitely here. We do still have a few things growing in the garden, though. Some of those things we planted knowing that the hard frost that we've been having wouldn't hurt. So I'm going to walk around and show you how those things are doing. This is the flower bed right outside my kitchen window. You can really see how the frost has damaged the zinnias, the old maids, how they've all just turned brown. But you can also see the things that it's not hurt yet so far. Those are bachelor buttons. You can see the little buds there. I'm not sure if they'll bloom, but maybe they will. See that yellow flower down in the middle there? That's calendula. It can stand some of the colder weather. Here's also some up here, still getting ready to bloom. You can see the little moss rose, though. It's totally just turned brown and dying back because of the frost. Now, a lot of people told me that those would reseed themselves. I've never had that happen, but I really hope it happens this year. But on the other hand, I've never really grown them that much either. So I'm really hopeful all those little seeds will just fall off and reseed themselves for next year. Another thing the cold weather really hasn't bothered is the cosmos. It just took them all summer long, but aren't they pretty? They're still blooming. There's a bud that's yet to open. I'm not sure it will, but the blooms are still pretty and the foliage is still green and pretty and lush. There's one that's on its way out. You can save the seeds from them too. I rarely do, but you can. The anemones have finished blooming, and this is what their little, after the bloom's gone, what their little seed head looks like. And look, once it opens, what it looks like. Isn't that interesting? Let's see if I can get this one out of the way. Oh, they're attached so that you could see it better. Isn't that interesting how it comes out and see all those little, it's almost like milkweed or cotton or something. Very, very interesting. They also, I think, spread by underground, by their runners underground as well. But that's what those, eventually all those will turn white and open like that. Here's one that's just starting to open up. This is our bed of mustard greens. We've been enjoying them, been eating them, cutting them back at the bottom like that in the hopes they'll come back out. And you can see there's a little leaf coming back out. So we hope to enjoy them all winter long. Just everywhere you look, you can see the beautiful leaves of fall. The trees have put on their fall garments. This is a little poplar sapling that's just come back out from where we've cut the tree down, and they just keep springing up. But aren't the leaves just lovely? So pretty. Here's some more interesting seed. Look at this. I'm not sure what this is called. It's just a weed. Some of you probably know. I'm sure you'll tell me. And it grows everywhere wild here. I see it every year. I've always seen it since I was a little girl, and I like it because it's literally like, you know, cotton almost. What's happened this year is where we cut back all the trees around the big garden down there, just a forest of this grew. You know, once the trees were gone and the understory there could get all the sunshine it needed, just a forest. And so much so that when it first started blooming out like this, the first few days, or not blooming out, but going to seed and turning into this like cotton-like substance, it just, the whole air of the holler up here at our end was just floating with it. It almost looked like it was snowing every time the wind would blow, and I was like, where is all that coming from? I knew it wasn't coming from. I have a few here on the banks where it always grows up here at my house, you can see. But then I noticed it was down there at the big garden. It's just like a forest of it, and it was blowing from down there all the way up here. So I expect next year we'll have it in lots of places. Our roses that we planted this year are still blooming. Beautiful color there. And even this one that's not bloomed as much is trying to bloom a little bit. I can't wait to see how, now that they've kind of become established, we're going to cut them way back, but see how they do next year. There's one that's still got a bud on that one. It's really nothing left much back here in the back, except for a few flowers here and there, a few nasturtiums that were, the top part of them all got shriveled, but if you look way up underneath, you can still see some of the leaves that look pretty good. But you can really see, I'll show you up close, but in our beds over here, how the frost, we've had multiple frosts now, how it's just sunk them down. Ones that are more sheltered in certain places look a little bit better. And a little bit of the herbs, a lot of them have turned black and brown and died back, but again, some of them that were so big and so full underneath, they were still alive. And this week we've had warmer weather, and some of them have kind of spruced back up and look pretty good. So in the herb bed, you can see here the basil totally just turned black and died back. That's the orange balm that I bought from Satterfield's this year, and it's still going strong. The frost has hurt. You can see up here in the front where it got some of it, but not other parts of it that's kind of come back. I'm not sure that I would plant it again. I liked it okay, but I didn't like it as good as lemon balm. I would prefer the lemon. And this is the end with the lemon balm in it, and you can see some of the leaves have turned black, but then some of them still look okay. I've still been coming out here and digging back in the middle of it down in there and getting some of the leaves to use for my kefir water. And you can see the hyssop is turned, because of the frost, it's turned black. This area, though, is where you can really see, well, there's several areas, I shouldn't say that, where you can see the effects of the frost. You can see how droopy and how the beautiful nasturtiums that were just up and flowy, how they've just all sunk down to the bottom here as I walk on them. See, they've just sunk down in the beds, too. Even the leaves that are still here kind of look yellowy around. There's that beautiful water ponding, though. And we've not had rain. This is just a wonderful example of the Lord's magic, if you ask me. Lord's majesty is the dews that we have here. Look at that water. That's all from dew. We've not had rain in a good long time, really since Helene, since the hurricane come through. We did have just a sprinkle over the weekend, but it wasn't even enough to wet the ground. But isn't that amazing, that dew? That it's wet like that just from the dew. That one looks like a little diamond there. This monstrosity here is my horseradish. I've only grown horseradish for last year and this year, and last year I just let it go and I didn't dig it up and do anything with it. I hope to do that this year, to take some of this up and get the root out. So that's something I need to be thinking about in the coming days, I'm sure. This is new growth, though. You can see there coming up, new growth. I have it in a container, in a grow bag, but I guarantee you that underneath it has grew through the grow bag put its roots into the actual land, into the earth. These flowers are kind of not really sheltered, but a little bit underneath the eave of the greenhouse there. You can see the petunias, it really hurt them. More than that, though, look at the dahlias, just totally made them die back. And the basil there. Calendula is still kind of hanging on, but looking pretty ratty too. This is our tomato bed, so you can see the tomatoes definitely don't like the cold. There's a little green one that we left, 2 little green ones. Someone, or several people, actually asked me why we didn't get all the green ones. Now, with the tomatoes, we've never had good luck, like if I picked this and took it inside, with them actually turning ripe. But what you could do, if you wanted to, was certainly pick them and take them in and pickle them, or try to let them ripen, or even chop them up for some kind of salsa, or cook with them, whatever it is that you wanted to do. But we don't usually do that with the tomatoes. We do get the bigger tomatoes, but with the tomatoes we try to pick all the ones that are ripe right before we know a frost is coming, and the rest of them we just leave. But you sure could take them in and do something with them if you wanted to. It takes a few good frosts to finally get all of the Malabar spinach, but you can see what it does to it. It just turns it into mush. Finally gets it. The first frost will get the outside layers, and then as the more frost come, it'll get all the way through until it actually kills it. This is some of the seeds there. You could save those. I've not actually saved any of them, but what happens is they'll drop off. They've dropped off all summer. There went one in my hand, actually. And then they just drop off right here where they're at, and they reseed themselves. just volunteer next year. So I've not had to plant any in a while. Now what happens is also because of that, they will drop off and end up in places you maybe don't want them, and you may have to pull up a few of them in the early in the summer. This nasturtium, you see how limp it is, was growing in the green stalk. There's some little seeds. I need to come out and get some of the seeds that are everywhere. I hope next year to plant this green stalk full of either nasturtiums, or one of you give me or maybe more than one of you give me the suggestion of petunias. I think that would be really lovely. Maybe even mix them together. Wouldn't that be pretty? One of my dreams for next year. This is the Cherokee purple bed where we had our Cherokee purples, and you can see it's just nothing left. Even the leaves have fallen off of these, so this is a bed that needs to be cleaned out, and you can still see the Malabar spinach at the end. If you see a watermelon piece laying over there, I'm still buying watermelon. I'm just crazy about watermelon. And that watermelon was no good, so that's why it's out here. It was just mush on the inside, and I like to say that I've never hardly met a bad watermelon. Some are definitely better than others, but most of the time I can eat them. But that was one that was just like liquid on the inside. And I even offered it to my chickens, but they turned their nose up at it too. So I moved it over here, actually just this morning, to the bed just for compost. This bed of flowers is kind of like the one up in the front. There's a lot of damage you can see to the flowers that have been frosted, some of them worse than others. Then there's still some cosmos. The lamb's ear back there still looks beautiful. You know, I don't even think that bloomed this year. I don't remember seeing it bloom, not one time. Really looks lush and beautiful, and it's big, but I don't remember it blooming at all now that I think about it. You can see the lantana does not like the frosty nights that we've been having. And these are the nasturtiums that really look the best. You can definitely see how they've melted down there. But these that are hugged up close to the house still look pretty good. I don't see any, well, actually I do see some blooms on the other side. So they're still trying to bloom and look pretty good right here hugged up against the house. Down in our largest part of the garden here, you can definitely see the frost has affected things down here. You may notice our oakery, our long row of oakery's gone. It just kind of crumpled it, so we've already took it out. And then you can see the beans, the things that are still hanging on the cattle panels are bean vines, but you can see how brown and kind of droopy they are. The frost, of course, beans can't handle the frost either. But then you may notice this really long, lush green there in the middle. Those are our turnips, and they're just doing wonderful. I think they would do better, though, if we did have some rain, if we'd got some rain. We've tried to water things, though, since there's not much of it. It's easier than this summer when it was so dry trying to water everything. So we've tried to water them some, and then also the stuff that we have planted on down below them. If you look back in the turnips, you can see some of them beginning to, there's a little turnip, and there's one. Of course, we love to eat the greens too, as much as we love the turnips. I guess I'm telling a story there, though. I really like the turnips better than the greens, although I do like the greens. I love to take a turnip like that. I love to cook them stewed, but I also love to just chop them up, like slice them up, put salt on it, and eat it raw. Even though so much of the garden has died back, like the beans and things, and you know, this time of the year there's a lot of, you can see over there, the dead weeds and things that never got pulled out of my flowers. Now you can see how brown they are. Looks really overgrown. There is still a lot of beauty, and one thing I've been so excited about are these. This is a chrysanthemum, and if you may notice how tall it is, this one that's probably almost up to my waist, at least the top of my thigh. These were from Granny's yard, and I brought them up here. These are like the old-timey mums, and you can kind of see they sprawl out. Some of hers right now are laying on the ground. You just walk by them and see them. Now, when I was growing up, she had this one, and then she had a yellow one. The yellow one is gone somehow. I even looked this week down there thinking maybe somehow it had come back, but it's gone. But I read in the Frank C. Brown collection of North Carolina folklore that they're often called, or they used to be called, they're not called that now at all, yellow and white Octobers, because October is when they bloom. Isn't that precious? But I planted these, I got me a piece of it probably 2 years ago, maybe even 3, and brought them up here and planted them right here. And it took this long for them to bloom. This is the the first real lush bloom that they've had, you can see. And I've just enjoyed them so much. Every time I pull up in the car, I can see them kind of shining through all the other stuff that needs to be pulled out. I've really enjoyed them. And of course, they are pretty, but it's a sentimental thing because of Granny. See, here's one that's all the way bent over, about to be on the ground. You could probably cut them back during the summer and make them bushier, more like the modern day chrysanthemums that you can buy. But isn't that just lovely? I'll just leave them the way they are, and they remind me of Granny and home. And one thing the frost has not hurt at all, has really actually just increased it, is this bed of kale. Doesn't it look great? Now, this bed of kale we planted actually way back in the spring. If I get over here at a closer look, you can see how big the stalk is, much bigger than my finger. So that's because it's been growing all year. And what we would do is just trim off as the leaves come up and eat them, and then more leaves would come out at the top. You can see some of the new growth right there. So once the cool weather got here, this bed of kale has just had a renewal. Looks much like it did back in the early spring, but it took that cooler weather to get it to really thrive again. I noticed yesterday when I was out here doing something, here is some onions I somehow missed, and they've come back out during the cooler weather too. Look at that one right there. I think that's one just now starting to come out. I missed them probably because this place become just overrun with weeds. You can see some of the weeds back there behind them. So that was a pleasant surprise. Actually, now that I look at the weeds, I see 2 more back there. So I need to remember to come out and pull up these onions and eat them pretty quick. This is our parsnips and our carrots that we planted, again, early in the summer, early in the spring, actually. So I've pulled up we've ate 1 row of carrots, and I need to harvest the rest of these. But a lot of you told me about the parsnips, I should wait till after it frosted and then start harvesting them. They would be sweeter. So we definitely need to start eating on them. And it's the first time we've ever grown parsnips, and only about the 3rd or 4th time that we grew carrots. I still can't believe I can grow carrots. I tried for so many years that I finally give up. But for me, the secret, or not really the secret, I guess just what works for me, what I found is I need to plant them really early. Like, I mean February early March at the latest. But I've been aiming for the end of February. And then that seems to be what works best for me. Maybe that might work for you if you've never had good luck planting carrots. There's also the trick of like planting them under cardboard. You've seen people do that, or under a board. I've never tried that. But I watched a video or read a magazine article or something of somebody saying plant them really early. So I tried that and grew carrots for the first time ever. And that's how I've been doing it ever since. This is 1 row of the fall things that we planted. They're just barely coming along, but they are. There's some radishes. You can see them as we go out through there. This one's got pushed off to the edge there, but they are growing. The thing about growing fall things like this is they grow very slowly compared to that supercharged growth that happens with the really warm days. So things in the fall grow at a much slower pace. And these are the other things we planted late, just because I wanted to plant stuff that day. So this is some lettuce, you can see coming on, 2 different kinds. I've got a lot of leaves in there falling off the trees. You can also see some little tiny tomato plants there. I'm just going to pull those up because they're not going to, of course, make it. Those seeds were just in the compost that we used, I'm sure. So coming right along, again, growing slower than it would if it was those really warm days. And this one, to be honest with you, I can't remember what this is. I'll have to wait for it to grow. It's either might be the miner's lettuce. Don't really look like that though. Might be what it is. I could go back and watch my video, but if it grows to get larger, then I'll be able to know for sure what it was. But at least I've got some growth, just again, growing slowly. And I've been watering these too to make sure they have enough moisture. In this one, again, a lot of leaves in here. Get the leaves out so you can see. I'm pretty sure this is the corn green that I planted. It's called like a corn. I can't remember the exact name of it. I've grew it before and it's pretty tasty. We like it. But you can see back here in the back, that is just a bunch of bunch of little tomatoes that have sprouted up. I'm going to pull those out. That's all that is. But this part is the corn salad, I think's the name of it, corn salad. Just a green. You can see some growth in this one and a lot of leaves. And can't you just hear Matt saying, Tipper, why didn't you mark them? But when this gets bigger, I'll be able to tell what it is. It looks like kale right now. Might be some more kale. I did plant a few collard greens, though, so maybe it's the collard greens. I'm not sure. Might be that. And then this one is really, you can see, doing the best here. And again, I'm not sure if this one, I don't think this is the collards. I think that other one is, because I only had a very, very few seeds of those to plant that someone had sent me. So this one may be the kale. And we've got some tomato plants growing in it too. I'll have to go back and watch my video. I should have done that before. At least I'll know what I planted. But I know it was miner's lettuce, the corn, the collards, the lettuce. And I'm guessing kale. This one must be the kale. But I should have marked it. Look, right there's a little acorn trying to burrow in and so that it can grow. Another little tomato. But all in all, it's looking pretty good. Again, in the fall, you got to know that it's going to take some time for things like this to grow. It doesn't have that supercharged fast growth of spring. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but there's a squirrel right up there barking at me. It's fussing about something. Maybe I'm disturbing its peace and quiet. Or maybe it's something else disturbing it. Hear it a little bit. I also hear a lot of birds. I just heard a crow there. It's really, really beautiful morning, especially with all of the color around me. I really thought this year that the leaves would not be as vibrant because of our dry summer, terribly dry summer. Maybe that all that dump of rain, see leaves falling around me, all that dump of rain from the storm from Helene, maybe that helped. Or maybe they would have been pretty anyway, what do I know? But they are really, really pretty everywhere you look, especially probably the last 3 or 4 days. I've really noticed it driving back and forth to the post office or just coming outside for a stroll around the house, a walk around the house. They're really, really lovely, and I'm thankful to live in a place that has all those distinct seasons. So I hope you enjoyed walking around the yard with me. Of course, around the gardens, the frost has done most of it in, which we know that's part of gardening. That's what happens. Those hard frosts comes and that's what happens. But there is, still some things here and there, a few flowers and things that are still looking pretty good. And then we have the promise of those fall things that we planted, the turnips. They've already been enjoying the mustard greens. And the kale, already been enjoying it, although we planted it way early in the spring. But those other things we planted, it's nice to be able to enjoy those. If you're a gardener, it's nice to always have your hands in the dirt. But there is a relief in, not having to worry about harvesting tomatoes, the okra that's an everyday job, all those kind of things. It is nice to take a rest from the garden, even though it's tinged with a little bit of sadness. It is nice. I recently had someone ask me, 2 different people asked me about compost. Matt and I compost from our chickens, when we clean everything out, we put all that in a pile. And then, of course, I have vegetable scraps and stuff like that sometimes. I try to feed all of them that the chickens will eat to them, but sometimes you have more than that. Sometimes you have the stuff that you clean out of the garden, you have those kind of things. Now, there's experts about compost and how to make it really fast and how to do it exactly like you're supposed to do it. We're not those people, so we can't really speak to that. We pile all of ours up in a big pile, and then when we need compost, we just go get some of that and put it on the garden. I know that, maybe that's wrong, maybe that's not how you should do it, but that's how we do it, and it seems to work okay for us. So we're not ever going to be people that can tell you how to do compost, because that's just how we do it. Now, I do it another way that really gets on Matt's last nerve, but Miss Cindy, Matt's mother, she had a friend, Solly, who taught me this, And, well, he taught me this, but then also Granny would do it too. So maybe a combination of those. Is that Solly would actually take some of his, he didn't have a compost pile. He was one person living at home by himself and didn't have big meals or anything like that for people. So if he had potato peelings or something like that, and he didn't have any kind of animals to feed them to, he would just take it out to his garden and he would dig a hole and he would put them in the hole and then cover it back up. And that was his method of composting. Of course, the beneficial bugs and microbes and bacteria and all that would find the peelings and compost them. Granny would do a method of that, but she would just throw her scraps on the garden, just throw them out, if it was peelings or whatever it was. Again, when I was growing up, we didn't have chickens or anything. Steve had chickens one time when I was young, but that didn't last long. Anyway, so she would do it that way. So sometimes I do that, this time of the year especially, when from now till spring, like that watermelon piece that I was showing you, I will do that. If I have some scraps, maybe I've got coffee grounds and something, eggshells and something else that I know the chickens won't eat, instead of taking them to the compost pile, I just throw them on one of the beds and know that over the winter they will decompose. I don't even dig them in like Solly did. I should do that, but I don't, because I'm just in a hurry and I just throw them. And so what happens is it does decompose, most of it, and it definitely enriches the soil. Sometimes those things I throw out grow into a cabbage or something. Maybe it was a cabbage stalk or something that I threw out. If it was a tomato, there's probably going to be some little tomatoes that come up there next year. So sometimes, I see Binks, seen something out of the corner of my eye, but it was just Binks. Sometimes those things will grow. Other times, especially the eggshells, they may still be there next spring and we're digging in it, and then Matt finds an eggshell. That's when he acts like he doesn't like it. He's just teasing me though. He doesn't care. But that's another way of composting that's really easy, is just to throw it right there. Now, some places you wouldn't be able to do that. You'd have to just work with what you got, but you may live in a place where you have animals that would come and eat that or dig it up or something, and you wouldn't want that. Thankfully, we don't have that. Like those watermelon rinds, they'll lay there till they decompose and nothing won't bother them. I have a lot of people over the years that we've been doing YouTube ask me, well, why don't you have those same animals, that bother me, and maybe I even live in the city limits or something, why don't you have them? Well, my little mountain holler here where I live, several of my family members, extended family members, they have dogs that just roam loose. They're just on the loose, they're not penned up. So they make frequent trips all through everybody's yards, and they kind of scare those things away. If you're thinking about raccoons, even rats and things, a lot of times, of course we have Binks now for that, but even if it was like a big rat or something, they chase those things too, and tunnel, try to dig up their tunnels and everything like that. So they even get out after them. But especially thinking about rabbits and raccoons and possums and those kind of things, they just kind of keep them pushed back at bay, which is really a plus for us. Now, they may leave you an unwanted present in your yard that you might step in or something, but overall it's fine, and that's just the way we've always lived. So you know to keep an eye out for those unwanted piles of where the dogs have been. But so those are my 2 cents about compost. Again, I'm not an expert and sure don't pretend to be, because like I said, I know there's really, like, people use thermometers and they turn the piles and they do all that. We've never done any of that. And another thing we do, though, and if you watch our videos, is usually every year we buy a load of mushroom compost. It's just like compost. It's mostly, Matt tells me, he had to explain this to me not long ago, really. It is where people grow mushrooms, where they use it to grow mushrooms, but it's predominantly horse manure is what it is, horse manure. So in our local area, you can buy that at like a feed store, different places. Some places, just sell it in bulk mostly. So we have a dear friend that he'll bring us an entire dump truck load of that, and maybe we'll get him to bring us some mulch. Again, in our area, we have several sawmills, so he can go to the sawmill, and it's just wood mulch. It's just where they're cutting up trees to make lumber out of, and then they have a lot of scraps from that, and so that's what we use for mulch, is just tree mulch. And again, we have plenty of sawmills here where he can just go, and I'm sure he has a favorite one, I've never asked, but go and get a load, and then we pay him to bring it to us and dump it. It's funny to be thinking about compost and stuff this time of the year when the gardens are really being put to bed, other than those few little fall things. But that is the mind of a gardener, always thinking about next year. If you watched one of mine and Matt's recent videos, we were talking about what we didn't like this year, what we did like, and then of course what we dream about doing next year. Often Matt and I dream about doing stuff next year and it never happens. We never get there, but dreaming is part of the fun for sure as a gardener, and always hoping for the next gardening year. I hope you enjoyed walking around the garden with me this morning and seeing how things are doing and how things are not doing as far as the things that have been frostbit. I'm always glad when you stop by to help me celebrate Appalachia, and growing our food is a huge part of mine and Matt's life, has been since we've been married, and really was my whole growing up life because of Granny and Pap, the way that they raised me, you know, making a garden every year. So it's really a huge part of our lives, but I would say also just a huge part of the Appalachian culture, whether it's growing what you eat, or, you know, when you think about putting up and preserving all those wonderful things that maybe you have memories of grandmother and Mamaw and whoever making, and, you know, that fresh corn straight from the garden, and the green onions and kilt lettuce and all those things. So it's just a huge part of that, and I'm always grateful for you to help me celebrate that. I'm also really grateful to you, all of you who have helped with the storm victims and from Helene, stretches from Florida to West Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, of course, South Carolina, Georgia. If I didn't say Georgia, maybe I did, in Florida. Thank you so much. I would ask you to continue to pray. Prayers, it really a wonderful thing. It's our greatest weapon. If you're a believer, please pray that God would just help them in each way that they need Him. Those needs are going to continue in various ways. Some people are getting back on their feet. Others, it'll be a long, long time before they are. So please just continue to remember them in prayer.